Part 5.1. The Blackwood Legacy. Boston. 3 days earlier. The rain fell softly over Beacon Hill, the kind of gentle Boston rain that made the cobblestone streets gleam like polished silver. Grace Blackwood stood at the window of her townhouse, a glass of Bordeaux in her hand, watching the drops trace paths down the glass. She was 62 years old, though you'd never know it from her appearance. Silver hair styled in an elegant bob, face carefully maintained, posture straight as a board. She wore a cashmere sweater, the color of dove gray, and pearl earrings that had been in her family for 4 generations. She looked like a grandmother, a kindly, distinguished grandmother who baked cookies for her grandchildren and donated to charity. She was not. Behind her, at the mahogany desk that had been in the Blackwood family since 1892, her assistant Daniel sat reviewing documents. Daniel was 40, bald, with the kind of face that was instantly forgettable. He'd been with Grace for 15 years. He knew where the bodies were buried because he'd helped dig the graves. The operation in DC failed, Daniel said, not looking up from his tablet. Grace took a sip of wine. I gathered that from the news reports. Samuel Adeyemi outmaneuvered us. Again. Grace turned from the window. Her eyes were blue, the same blue as Catherine's, though Catherine's had always been warmer. Grace's eyes were cold, the blue of glacial ice. Adeyemi is becoming a problem, she said. A significant problem, Daniel agreed. He's cost us Diego, cost us the DC field office infiltration, and now Robert is cooperating with the FBI. Grace set her wineglass down with a precise, deliberate movement. Robert was always weak. That's why we could use him. Men like Robert, men who are motivated by fear rather than conviction, they break easily. And Adeyemi? Grace's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Adeyemi is different. He's motivated by something stronger than fear. He's motivated by love, for his brother, for his family, for justice. She walked to the desk and picked up a photograph. It was old, black and white, showing a young man standing in front of a building in Lagos. The building was marked with a sign, Blackwood Construction, West Africa Division. This is Emmanuel Adeyemi, Grace said. Samuel's father. He was an engineer for us in Nigeria. 30 years ago. Daniel looked up. I thought his father died in a construction accident. He did, Grace said. Or rather, he was killed because he asked too many questions about our building practices, just like his son is doing now. She set the photograph down and picked up another one. This one showed 2 boys, Samuel and Emeka as children, standing in front of their house in Lagos. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, Grace said softly. The father asked questions. The son asks questions. It's a family trait. What do you want to do about Samuel? Daniel asked. Grace was silent for a long moment. She looked at the photograph of the 2 boys, her expression unreadable. Then she said something that would change everything. Bring me his brother's file. All of it. Everything we have on Emeka Adeyemi. Daniel frowned. But Emeka is dead. We killed him. Grace's smile widened. Did we? The morning, after 3 days after the Navy Yard confrontation, Samuel sat at the kitchen table of the safe house, staring at a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. The house was quiet. Amara had taken the children to the park down the street, wanting to give them a few hours of normalcy after everything they'd been through. Samuel appreciated the gesture. He needed the quiet. He needed time to think. His chest still ached where the bullet had hit him, or rather, where it had hit his phone. The doctors had told him he was lucky. The bullet had been stopped by the phone, but the impact had still bruised his ribs. He'd be sore for weeks, but he was alive. That was what mattered. He looked at the phone, the one that had saved his life. It was cracked now, the screen shattered. He'd need to get a new one, but for now, it sat on the table in front of him, a reminder of how close he'd come to dying. His mind kept going back to Grace Blackwood. She was still out there, still free, still dangerous. The FBI was working on tracking her down, but so far, they'd had no luck. She'd disappeared completely. No credit card activity, No phone calls, no sightings. It was like she'd vanished off the face of the earth. But Samuel knew better. Grace Blackwood wasn't the type to just disappear. She was planning something. She was always planning something. His phone, the cracked one, buzzed. A text from Agent Martinez. "We need to talk. Come to the field office when you can." Samuel sighed. He'd been hoping for a day off, but duty called. He finished his coffee, cold now, and got up to get dressed. The FBI field office was buzzing with activity when Samuel arrived. Agents moved quickly through the halls, carrying files, talking into phones, looking stressed. The compromise of the DC office had shaken everyone. Trust had been broken, and now they were working double time to make sure it didn't happen again. Martinez was waiting for him in a small conference room. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, her arm still in a sling, but her expression was determined. "Thanks for coming," she said as Samuel sat down. "You said it was important," Samuel said. "It is." Martinez pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "We've been analyzing the data from the USB drive, the one Robert gave us." Samuel opened the folder. Inside were financial records, emails, photographs, the usual evidence of Blackwood's criminal activities. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "Look at page 7, Martinez said. Samuel flipped to page 7. It was a bank statement from an account in the Cayman Islands. The account holder was listed as Blackwood Holdings LLC. "That's just another shell company," Samuel said. "Look at the transactions," Martinez said. Samuel looked, and his blood ran cold. There were dozens of transactions, large sums of money being moved in and out of the account. But what caught his attention was the dates. These transactions were recent, within the last week. "Grace is still moving money," Samuel said. "Exactly," Martinez said. "She's draining the accounts, moving money to new locations. She's covering her tracks, so she is planning to disappear. It looks that way, but there's something else." Martinez pulled out another document. "Look at this email." Samuel read it. It was from Grace to an unknown recipient. The content was brief. "The operation is compromised. Initiate phase 3. All assets to be liquidated and transferred to the secondary accounts. Timeline: 72 hours. "Phase 3? Samuel asked. "We don't know," Martinez said. "But based on the context, it sounds like a contingency plan. A way to escape if things went wrong." And the timeline: 72 hours from when the email was sent, which was yesterday. Samuel did the math. "So we have less than 2 days." "Exactly," Martinez said. "If we don't find her by then, she'll be gone." Samuel leaned back in his chair, thinking, where would she go? That's the problem. We don't know. She's covered her tracks well. But we do have one lead. "What?" "Robert," Martinez said. "He's been cooperating, but he's holding something back. I can tell. There's more he knows. Something about Grace's contingency plans. But he's scared to talk." "Scared of what?" "Scared of Grace," Martinez said. "Whatever leverage she has over him, it's more than just threats. There's something else, something personal." Samuel thought about this. Robert Newen had been a weak man, manipulated by Grace, used as a pawn. But he was also a man who had killed his own brother-in-law, a man who had tried to steal from his own sister. He wasn't just scared, he was guilty. "Let me talk to him," Samuel said. Martinez raised an eyebrow. "You want to interrogate him?" "I want to understand him," Samuel said. "I want to know what Grace has on him. Because if we're going to take down the entire network, we need to know how it works. And Robert is the only one who's been inside." Martinez considered this. Then she nodded. "Okay, but I'll be there. And Samuel, be careful. Robert is dangerous. Don't forget that." "I won't," Samuel said. The confession, the Federal Detention Center, was a gray concrete building in Alexandria, Virginia. It wasn't glamorous. No fancy interrogation rooms with two-way mirrors and recording equipment. Just a small room with a table, 2 chairs, and a camera in the corner. Robert Wynne sat at the table, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked terrible, pale, unshaven, his usually immaculate hair disheveled. He wore an orange jumpsuit that made him look smaller than he was. Samuel entered the room, followed by Martinez. Robert looked up, and for a moment, Samuel saw something in his eyes. Shame, maybe, or fear. "Robert," Samuel said, sitting across from him. Robert didn't respond. He just stared at his hands. "I need to ask you some questions," Samuel said. "About what?" "About Grace Blackwood." Robert's head snapped up. "I've already told you everything I know." "No," Samuel said. "You've told us about the money laundering, about the murders, about the network, but you haven't told us about yourself." Robert's jaw tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means," Samuel said, "that you didn't just work for Grace. You were part of her family, or at least, you thought you were. She didn't just use you, she owned you. And I want to know how." Robert was silent for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, "You don't understand what it's like." "Then help me understand," Samuel said. Robert looked at him, really looked at him, and Samuel saw something he hadn't seen before. Not just fear, but pain. Deep, old pain. "I was 25, Robert said. "Fresh out of business school, I had these ideas. Big ideas. I was going to start my own company, make my fortune. I was going to prove myself." He paused, swallowing hard. "My father died when I was young, left my mother and me with nothing. She worked 3 jobs to put me through school. And I promised her I'd make something of myself, that I'd take care of her." Samuel said nothing. He just listened. "But I was stupid," Robert continued. "I made bad investments, lost money, borrowed more, and then I met Grace." "How did you meet her?" Martinez asked. "At a charity gala," Robert said. "She was there with some of her business associates. She saw me, saw how desperate I was, and she offered to help." "How?" Samuel asked. "She paid off my debts," Robert said. "All of them. $2 million. Gone. Just like that. And in return," Robert's voice dropped to a whisper, "in return, I became hers. She didn't just want money. She wanted loyalty. Absolute loyalty. And she had leverage." "What kind of leverage?" Samuel asked. Robert closed his eyes. "She had photographs of me with a man who wasn't my wife." Samuel understood immediately. "Blackmail. Not just blackmail," Robert said. "She had enough evidence to destroy my marriage, my reputation, everything. My mother was sick then. Cancer. She was in hospice care. And Grace told me that if I didn't cooperate, she'd make sure my mother found out. That she'd die knowing her son was a fraud and a failure." The room was silent. Samuel felt a chill run down his spine. "So you did what she said," he said. "I did what she said," Robert confirmed. "For 15 years, I did whatever she wanted. And when she told me to help her take Maggie's money, I did it, because I was too scared to stop." He looked up at Samuel, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know what I did. I killed Thomas. I tried to destroy my own sister. I'm a monster." Samuel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're not a monster, Robert. You're a weak man who made terrible choices, but you can still do the right thing now." Robert looked at him. "How?" "Tell us everything," Samuel said. "Tell us how Grace operates. Tell us about the network. Tell us everything she's ever done. Because if we're going to take her down, we need to know everything." Robert nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll tell you everything.